Low-key, it's so cold right now. I opened my window for 2 seconds and then I forgot about it, so I guess it's my own fault, but like, I'm cold. We're going to talk about success today. What is success? And honestly, this is something I've been thinking about for years, and I feel like I've kind of closed it in on a tiny little definition. And by tiny, I mean this is probably going to be like a 20-minute episode. Maybe shorter. We're going to go for shorter, hopefully, because I always seem to pick up the camera when my phone or when my battery is almost dead, so oops. If you've enjoyed these videos before, or if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and like and comment below on what you define success as or anything that resonates with you in the videos. Let's get started. So I feel like first the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what even is success to you? Like, that's like the whole question of this video. Like, what is success? And throughout the years, I've really tried to think on that. I was definitely an overachiever in high school. I tried to get straight A's, and it wasn't until about my junior year that I really started to understand that I could not put 200% into everything that I did. And around that time was also when I think I started to really think about what is success. Honestly, like when you go through something difficult, it can sometimes force you to really think about things a little bit differently. And this is when I started to do that. And one of the things that really seemed like success to me was doing something that really made you feel passionate. So as we know, I have dealt with panda disorder in the past, and that was something I was really passionate about. That was something that really inspired me to keep going and inspired me to talk about my experience and even build this podcast here. So it took me years after this to figure out what it was that I really wanted to do, what it was that I was passionate about. And from that, I ended up building this podcast, which you're listening to right now. Make sure to listen to any other episodes in the playlist, the podcast playlist, if you are new here, because we are a lovely group of friends here that we just like to sit down and have a little chat. So I think that I started really thinking about success as this concept of not like, oh, you have a lot of money, or you have a high, I guess, status or something like that in the world, but rather that you are happy with the life that you've built. I did a lot of finding myself around those years, and once I started finding myself, I realized that honestly, there is no perfect equation to how a successful life is, or just how a life should be in general. Like, I'm a very analytical person sometimes, so sometimes I like to have something as simple as x plus y equals whatever, right? Like, I like to have things like straight right out there for me, like just like planned out, makes sense. And I don't like to have that questionable future coming up right there. And so this is when I really started to think about it, like, no, like life isn't just this equation that, like yes, it can be. Like, I do think that everything that has happened in my life has led up to this exact moment right here, and this exact moment will lead up to something else in my life. So in that aspect, in that way, it kind of is like an equation, because it all adds up and it all fits together. But I don't feel like there's an equation that fits everyone. It's not a one size fits all. It's the only way to find the end to that equation. We're just gonna run with this like equation thought here then, because not attend this, but I kind of like it. The only way to find the end to that equation is to find each individual variable that adds up to it, right? Like, to not be trying to take something from another equation and put it in here, even though that's what you do in math and sometimes in substituting. We're ruining the analogy here. My point is, the only way to find the final destination of that is to figure out what works best for your specific equation, your specific life. What is it in your life that feels right? You know, like all of these life events I feel like are building up to it. And I am the type of person that truly believes if something's meant for you, it's gonna come, it's gonna happen, right? So like, even if it doesn't happen in a certain way that you expect or something, I do think that a lot of what is meant to happen, or a lot of what does happen, comes with lessons. The only way to find the answer to this equation is to find each individual piece that goes into it, right? Each individual variable, each individual thing, and that is the experiences in our life. And that's why I say that it's not a one-size-fits-all, because each experience in our life makes up this equation, makes up you, who you are, what you are, the experiences that you've had, the way that you think, the way that you talk, the way that you express yourself, the way that you know, what you end up doing in life. Like, all of it builds up. Like, your environment is so important to you, your experiences are so important to you, even just the way that your, you know, chemical makeup is, your DNA, everything. Probably the most traditional answer that we'll hear in success for women is something like having kids, raising a family, right? And for one person that might be true, but for their next door neighbor, that might not be true. That might be the complete opposite. That might be the definition of not being successful to them, right? I feel like we're all just so different with this, and that's why it's like we can't compare our life to someone else's. This experience, this life, this purpose, this success is special to you. It's unique to you. In order to find the answer to that equation, you know, all of these separate variables make it up, right? The equation does not have an answer without the equation itself. And that's where I come into really truly believing that it's about the journey and not the destination, which you've heard before probably. But I do think that it's got value in it, because I think that when I tend to focus on the destination, like let's use this podcast as an example, right? Or even school or something. Like, my destination would be something like graduating, getting a good job, or here it would be, you know, like getting 1 million subscribers or something, right? Like, that would be the dream come true, right? But if I'm so focused on that, I'm not enjoying this process. If I was so focused on that, I'd be looking at this podcast and think, why am I even doing it? It's not worth it, right? Because I don't have 1 million subscribers. But then if I look at, you know, yesterday versus today, even just like before I started YouTube versus now that I do YouTube, like, I've gotten thousands of listens, views that I didn't have before. And so it's each individual thing that adds up to that final destination. And I feel like that's why we have to look at success not as something like, I just, when I think of success, I think of, you know, when someone asks what is success, what would make you feel successful? I think of like, oh, you know, I would have an answer like having a high paying job, having this or that, you know, right? I don't think that's what it is. I think success is more about your values, the way you live, the things that you do in your life. If, you know, you're truly living the way that you want to live, if you're truly doing things that build you up, like, what is your purpose in life? Like, what makes you feel happy? What is it that if your life ended tomorrow, you could look back at life right now and be like, yeah, I'm happy. Like, I'm proud of the way I lived. I just feel like that is something that has, like, thinking about it that way changed the entire definition of success for me, because I've heard people say things like this, like, it's about the journey, not the destination, or, you know, are you proud of how you live today in case you don't have tomorrow? Like, we hear all these things and they're little cheesy phrases and stuff, but I think they all have value to them, but I don't think they have as much value if you don't put it together in terms of what is success? Like, what is the definition of something that I had one definition for, and then I put these thoughts in there, and I'm like, wait a second, maybe that's not the destination. Like, maybe that's not the definition. I'm not sure if this is making sense at all, but I feel like I used to look at my life very differently than I do now that I've learned to see the value in all of these different things and in the current moment. I feel like I had someone ask on my Instagram poll one time, and I think that it was in one of the podcast episodes, but they asked me, do you feel successful in life, or what is success? And my answer to that was, yeah, I do feel successful, and I have a long ways to go. I do feel successful, and I've made mistakes, or I do feel successful, and I think that I can feel more successful. Like, I feel successful in this very moment, but if I were to just end everything today and give up, not do anything else for the rest of my life, I wouldn't feel successful. I think it's every single moment that builds up to that. And really, ultimately, I do feel like success is being able to look at my life at the end of the day and be proud of the way I lived. Because honestly, you can't predict your future. I can't predict what tomorrow's going to bring. I can't predict if this podcast is going to continue to be a thing forever. I can't predict, I hope I'll graduate, but maybe something will happen and I don't, right? Like, I can't predict all of these different things in my life. But the thing that I can always do is live with my values, live with, positivity as much as I can, try, and really just look at life in a way that, let me do what I can with what I have. And let me also strive for something better. Let me continue to be moving forward towards something while also recognizing what I have and what is in the now, if that makes any sense there. Sometimes life isn't the way that we expect it. Sometimes closed doors open new doors for different things. Sometimes when something feels like it's falling apart, all of a sudden it opens new opportunities. Like, for example, the apartment that I was talking about in my last vlog. I recorded that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I still put it out with all of my struggles on the apartment because I do think that that's important. But now I can happily say that I have an apartment, I have a place, and it ended up working out more perfectly than I thought it would. Like, it ended up working out even better, which is awesome. And there was a part of me that, even though the entire thing was happening, I was stressed, right? I was really stressed. But there was a part of me that kept telling myself, something's going to open up for me. Something's if I didn't get this apartment in the first place, if it didn't work out, if my plans fell through, something's going to happen then, right? Something's going to work out because there's something meant to be, even if it means that I'm living in a bad place or something. Maybe I'll learn something from it. Maybe it'll give me the lesson that I need. And I'm glad I'm not going to be living in a bad place. But if I did, I had to be open to whatever life was going to give me. And I feel like that is, if you're focusing so much on the destination, how are you going to know that, you're going to constantly feel like a failure? Because the way that we picture our destination changes based on the different variables that are in the life. Based on what's happening today, my view of what I want my future to look like is different. It changes constantly. And so I think that it's important that we change with it. I feel like that's a key that people don't necessarily understand. I don't feel like it's about achieving something specific. I think it's about feeling like you did the best you possibly could. So now that I've gone on my ramble about what I think success is, how do you actually set yourself up for success? How do you do that? If you don't know what this destination is even going to be, how do you set yourself up for it? And this is where I really want to stress, I think setting yourself up for success is about how you live your everyday moment, how you live right now, because that will change the way that the future is going to look. One thing that I did when I was really trying to figure out who I was, finding, just ways to set myself up for success, ways to just figure out how I wanted to live, was by looking at something called your highest self. Now, I don't always call it my highest self. That's just what I've heard it as, and I guess think of it that way. But call it whatever you want. It's this version of you that is, perfection. I don't like to use the word perfection, but that's the only way I can like describe it in this case. It's this version of you that you want to be, this version of you that when you envision a future that you're happy with, that's who you are. And you have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's not saying you're going to become that exact person, right? Our vision of the future changes based on different things, and we can't achieve something like perfectly, because sometimes it's just like, you know, my vision of myself now is very different than my vision of myself was before, but I do think that it has aspects of it still. It's just been tweaked a little bit, right? So looking at, in this very moment, who is it that you want to be? You know, when I think about who I want to be in the future, I think about, I want to be someone who is confident in being independent. I want to be someone who is comfortable spending time away from her phone, spending time away from the fast-paced lifestyle. I want to be someone who, you know, can sit down multiple times per week and have a book to read and be continuing to do these podcasts and really loving them and have someone, and I want to be someone who is able to live in a place that I love. I want to be someone who is able to really value the environment around her, value the person that she is, and like all these things. Like, it's hard to describe it because I have this like envision of a human being that is me, like kind of right in front of my face. Like, it's just like right there, and I'm like envisioning it, and like it gives me this like, oh yeah, like that, like it just feels so good, right? But I can't really describe it, I guess. So, but think about that, like in your own life, like who is that when you think into the future? Like, you want to be them, you know? It's not someone else, it's you. And what is that best version of you? And then I would look at that and I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not that person right now, but if that person was me right now, what would she do in this scenario? So for example, when I'm sitting on my phone, because I have been really trying to take time away from being online lately because it's just been draining me. And I've also just been going like through so much lately. I've been traveling so much lately. And I really needed a little bit of a reset. So being away from my phone, doing things like reading, doing things like doing yoga, like you can tell that my future self that I'm looking for right now is very based upon the fact that I have been feeling burnt out right now. So it's already habits that I've kind of been trying to do, but putting like an actual name to that, putting like really like consciously thinking about like, who is it that I want to be, is somehow more motivating for me, because it makes me think of like, oh wait, I can envision this future version of myself. So I feel like I actually have something I'm working towards. Because when you don't know what the end result is going to be, it can be really hard to actually have the motivation to do it. So sometimes you have to set yourself a goal and, you know, be aware that that goal might not be exactly like you envisioned it in the end, but having something to kind of be like, yeah, that's what I'm striving for, you know? So, you know, in this exact moment, I would be like, well, what would this version of me be doing? This version of me would be talking to you, would be really embracing this amount of time here, really grateful for the fact that she gets to do this, really grateful for the mind that she has, the fact that she's able to have these amazing thoughts. And then after this, she would probably spend some time relaxing. She wouldn't, you know, whip out the computer right away, try to get all of everything uploaded right away, because she'd know how to take breaks. So that's what I'm going to do after I record this episode. I'm going to give myself some time, maybe go out with friends, do stuff. Like, I'm going to let myself relax. And so just looking at like who this future self is, and then if she was here right now, or if they were here right now, what would they be doing? And that is somehow kind of like just lessening that gap between the person that you are now and the person that you want to be. Like it's merging them together. And the more that you do this, all of a sudden you realize you're becoming that person. Like you already have it within you. And it's just about almost naming it, of like, who is it that you want to be? How is it that you want to live? So that is, I think, the best way that I set myself up for success. But there were also a lot of things that contributed to it and to my ability to actually do this. So things like changing my habits. I think I've talked about habits before on here, but really, like, if you guys haven't read Atomic Habits, it is so good. good. Really setting yourself up for success there by being like, hey, this is what I want to do. How can I make it easier for myself? How can I make it more manageable? How can I set myself up for success so that I actually am doing it, right? That I'm actually following through, because a lot of times it's not about the fact that like, oh, I'm just a failure, I can't do it. Like, no, it's because you didn't set yourself up to do it. And also recognizing that like maybe in order to actually become this better version of you, or to become this successful version of you, you may have to change some habits. You may have to release some negativity from your life. You may have to set some goals that are a little bit terrifying. You might have to take that leap of faith. You might have to do some things that are a little bit scary. When I started this podcast, it was terrifying. Even when I came to college, like I was not planning on coming to the college I'm at. I was not planning on any of that. And I took a leap of faith, and it ended up being this incredible thing for me. And so sometimes you do have to do that. You have to change your habits, and or you have to take a leap of faith. Another thing that has also been really helpful for me is to be able to track my life, be able to really look back and be like, hey, yeah, I was doing this, right? I think a habit tracker is really helpful for some people. I've gone back and forth between it, but one thing that I have always loved is journaling, because I love being able to look back a year ago, even just a few months ago, and be like, where was I, and I can read the things about me talking about like, what is it that I'm striving for in life? What is it that I'm working towards? And then I see in my life today, like I've achieved that. Like looking at the person that I am today, sometimes it just like, I don't know, it just makes me so incredibly grateful and proud and happy, because I look back on where I was a few years ago, and the person that I was striving to be is the person that I am today. Honestly, like it's crazy, but like the person that I am today, I have so much love and gratitude for her, because it is something that I was working on for so long. Like the person that I am today is not just because, oh, that's how I am. Like I do, a lot of my habits, a lot of my, little quirks, the way that I do things, right? Like part of it's genetic, part of it's how I grew up. Like all of it is like, yes, I have always been this person, but the way that I express this person, the way that I am this person, the way that I do things, like I am constantly growing. And the person that I was years ago versus the person that I am now, like it's just pure gratitude. Like I just am so grateful, because I really worked for this. I really worked for the person that I am today, and I'm not done. I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly learning. And I think that that's something that I wish that as a society, as humans, as like just like a whole, we did this more often, to really look at like, wow, you can be grateful for who you are. You can be proud of the things you've achieved. You can be proud of the way your mind works, of the way, you look, of the way you have expressed yourself, of the way, like all of these different things. You can be proud of them and grateful for them. Not proud, like overly proud, like an ego, which is something I want to talk about soon too. What an ego really is and why it's not, the greatest, but also looking at like, just like, who are you? Like being just grateful. And I think that that is really important, because being able to like look back on that and like journals, or like for me, podcast episodes, sometimes I can look back on that, or even photos of just like something to trigger your memory of where you were at that moment. Like these things are just sometimes amazing to look back on, and making a habit of being able to do that is just, I feel like it's really important. And I feel like it's a step that we miss a lot of times, because we are so focused on the end destination, right? And in the fact that like I feel like I am the person that I really strived for before to be, then this would be my destination, right? But it doesn't feel like the destination, because that vision of who I wanted to be has changed throughout the years, throughout the minutes, And so it is, I feel like, a constant journey. I feel like there is no destination. I feel like it's just a constant journey of continuing to become this person, become this better person, this better version of myself, because I can always better myself, right? I think that that's just something to look at there, of instead of striving for the end destination, strive to be who you truly are and who you want to be in that moment. And above all, really spend the time loving yourself. Spend the time having that gratitude for yourself, and be kind to yourself, because it is a process. It is a whole thing, and I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly figuring out who I want to be and who I don't want to be. It's a struggle. It's scary. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm just like stressed because I just don't understand like any of it, you know? And I think giving yourself the patience to be able to experience that, and to also be able to continue to grow, is just really important. So I'm sending everyone lots of hugs, and I'll see you next time.